We have the privilege of hearing from two people that I call family, yes. Mike and Auline Platt have been in my life since I was shorter and skinnier. Yes, but Mike and Auline Platt have traveled the world, literally. Mike served in the Air Force, and they were all around the world. In every place that they have gone, they have planted themselves. So when we talk about a theology of place, I think they have embodied that they have seen a place as God's calling, wherever that is, and they plant seeds of the gospel, they plant seeds of love, they sow in to the communities that they live in, and they have friends all over the world that call them family. They have family everywhere, and so it's a beautiful thing, and we are... I knew them when they lived here, how many years ago? 10, 15? 20 years ago? Am I that old? Okay, 20 years ago, when I was 17. And they planted and sowed into me, and they moved away for 20 years, and we're privileged that they chose to plant in their retirement, I believe, here. And they continue to invest, and they have planted in the International District, and I will soon get to call them neighbor, and soon get to work alongside of them. So they're going to come up and talk a little bit about incarnational ministry, incarnational living, moving into the neighborhood and loving your neighbor. So please come up and share, please.
Thanks, Jesse. I am not a fan of being in front of people speaking. I spend my days as a math teacher, and little kids I can talk to, high school kids I can talk to, adults I'm not so fond of. But here we go. Auline often tells me that I say yes too much before I think through what I'm saying yes to. And as I was sitting there listening to everybody else talk, I was like, oh, I just had said no. I wouldn't have to go up there. So anyway, here we are. And as Jesse said, we retired from the Air Force and have moved recently, Labor Day weekend, actually down into the International District. And so when John asked us and we sort of saw the title of Incarnational Living, as a math teacher, I sort of think we're the students talking to a lot of the teachers here because we are really new to the International District version of Incarnational Living, and we're still really getting our feet wet and trying to figure out what the Lord has in store for us there. But we thought a way to sort of introduce ourselves and maybe lend some insight into how we got here would be to just go through a brief history of our lives, and so I got the first mic. And so I was born in New Jersey, in a suburb of a suburb of a suburb of New York, basically, and in a very homogeneous network or community. I would say I went to a elementary school of about 1,000 kids, and there were 5 Asians in the school and 4 African Americans, and there were a lot of white kids in the school. And so I grew up not really living in a diverse community. And so when I went into the Air Force, that abruptly changed because the Air Force in and of itself is a somewhat diverse community. And then they bring us to different communities. And so that's sort of my background, and I'm going to pass it on to my wife.
I'm Auline, and when he was growing up in suburban New Jersey, I was growing up in the Philippines. I moved to the United States when I was 12 years old. We went from a pretty nice house. My parents were pretty well off. My mom was a cardiologist, and my dad was an actuary. I don't know if you know what that is. They do something with actuarial tables and figure out how much your insurance rate should be. So anyway, that's what he did. And we moved here, and we were immigrants. And we lived in Jersey City, New Jersey, which is one of the most culturally diverse neighborhoods. It's where the World Trade Center bombers lived. It's not a great thing to be famous for, but it's very diverse in terms of lots of different ethnicities settled there. So we moved there, and my parents, my mom was a cardiologist, and she could not practice medicine here because she didn't have a license, and so she had to take her classes, and she spoke English with a heavy accent, and took several years, and during those years, she worked as a nurse's aide emptying bed pans in a hospital, because that's what you do when your children are hungry. My dad couldn't have a job as an actuary because he hadn't passed the 9 tests you need to be an actuary in this country, so he worked at an Arby's cleaning, and he was a file clerk at an insurance company. So even then, the Lord was preparing me for what it means to be not necessarily a refugee, but what it feels like to be new, strange, and disenfranchised. I was the weird-looking, weirdly dressed kid with a funny accent in my school of about maybe 600 kids in elementary, and they made fun of me because I did not use contractions, because in the Philippines you don't say don't, you say I do not. Like, you learn how to speak English very properly, and I think it took me about 5 years to get rid of that. So that's kind of where I came from. We met at a summer camp, oddly enough. Again, the Lord preparing us. We were at a summer camp, the two of us, when we were juniors in high school. They picked 100 kids from the entire state of New Jersey, and you went, I call it nerd camp. The class I was in, I fell in love with, and it was kind of the first thing that opened my eyes to the world, and it was called Food, Land, and the Politics of Hunger. And it talked about how there's food, and there's lots of food, it's not proportionally distributed. And it's our responsibility to figure that out. And for a 16-year-old, that's pretty heady stuff. And we got to do some really cool things, and so that's how Mike and I met. And then years later, we got married, and he was in the Air Force, and he dragged me all around the park.
So the Air Force is, a bureaucracy. It's a big organization, and so it does its best to take care of families. But for the most part, it transports you from one location to another and says, okay, make a new life here. Your old life is gone. Make a new life here. And so the Lord really, every time we moved, the Lord was faithful. And maybe on like the 5th or 8th move, we should have figured that out that was going to happen. But I'm a little dense, and it took a while. But He was faithful to plant us in a body that He had picked out for us, with people that He wanted to minister to us and people He wanted us to minister to. And that provision from the Lord enabled us to live in a community each and every time that we were unfamiliar with. And it was, so just a short history, we started off in Los Angeles. We got married in Los Angeles. We moved to Ohio for a year and a half. We moved here for 5 years, to Germany for 3 years, to Turkey for 3 years, to DC for 3 years, back to California for 3 years, and then we retired. But so in all of those moves, each community had its own unique needs and its own unique gifts for us. And it was through those changes, those moves, those ripping up roots and resettling roots in a different place, that the Lord really brought us back to what was important, and that was our relationship with Him, our relationship with each other and the family, but primarily our relationship with Him, and how we were to be using that in each community setting that He put us in. And so as we made our final move back to here, probably about 5 years before it was time for us to retire, we were just back for a visit and talking to Jesse and his brother-in-law about some of the ideas and thoughts for living in community that they had been challenged with, and just felt the Lord calling us to be a part of this community. And we didn't really know, and we still don't to a large extent, know what this community is. We just know that the Lord has put us here, and has planted us here, and that we are called to grow roots here and to figure out what his purposes for us here are. And so, for those purposes, I will pass it.
So I am a little bit more rebellious than Mike. And when we started, let me backtrack a little bit. We moved, we kept moving, and there is no warm-up period when you move. You know, you get there, you got to hit the ground running, because we're moving in 2 years. If you need me to get to know you, need to spend time to get to know me, I'm moving on. Because I'm leaving. We're either friends now or we're not going to be friends at all. And that's kind of like, I'm kind of like a guerrilla friend. I'm showing up, we're going to be friends. And you're going to answer the door. And that's kind of how you have to do it, because if you do it the normal way, you're packing up as you're just finally getting to know somebody. So that's kind of a skill I'm not proud of, but that's a skill that we had to learn. So we, 5 minutes, I'll talk real fast. So anyway, when we started praying about retiring and moving here, I did not feel called to the International District. I wanted to be called to a gated community. I was like, I don't want to come here. I grew up in an inner city. I'm scared. We have lots of children. And we have a 17-year-old now who was 11 or 12 when we started talking about this. And so I kind of said to him, dude, you're going to be the one that's going to be heavily impacted. So what do you think? And his answer to me he said, Mom, I think it would be safer to live in a disadvantaged neighborhood and be following the will of God than to live in a gated community and be disobedient. And so if I've never done anything else right in my entire life, that was one. Just one thing.
So, again, like I said, we have 3 minutes for Stephen is going to throw things at us. So, again, we are just sort of at the threshold of understanding what it means to live incarnationally in the International District. All we really know is that we are called to be here by the Lord, that all we can really do is be faithful to that calling. And we definitely don't have it, or in my mind, don't have a lot to speak on from a point of wisdom to others who have been doing this for a lot longer and are probably a lot better at it. But we are here and hoping to build the relationships that we have built in the different places that we've lived here, and hopefully through our life, through what our family does and says and proclaims, be a community for those around us. I teach over at Highland, and as Trey was saying, we've got 26 languages that are spoken at Highland. We've got upwards right now, I think, of 30 refugee children that are attending that, for the most part, have no language skills and very little education. And they're thrust into a system that is not prepared for it. The lowest math we offer in Highland is Algebra 1, because that's where the system, the American system, says you should be by the time you get to high school. Most of our students aren't there, even the ones that have lived here their whole life. But for sure, the refugees are there. And so we're, through the different teachers and the different subjects, trying to figure out a way to reach them academically. But my heart is that we would reach them spiritually while we reach them academically. And so sort of my emphasis for the last few months has been trying to figure out how my new job will translate into a community of the Lord's choosing. And I'm going to let Auline have the rest of the 2 minutes or less that we have left, and talk just maybe a little bit about what community-wise we're seeing as opportunities. But again, just at the beginning of our journey.
So we've jumped in, and he's teaching at Highland. I'm volunteering at the elementary school. Our kids are enrolled. We're kind of helping with a new refugee family from Burundi. And so we're trying to kind of get our feet wet in lots of different places. But I just got to tell you, the kids wanted to know, all the little small children in green are ours. And the kids wanted to know what we were speaking about tonight, and I said Incarnational Ministry. And they said, well, what does that mean? And I said, well, I don't know. And so we kind of talked about what it was. And I know we talked a little bit about Incarnational Living, Incarnational Ministry, what does it mean? And the really tiny one that sounds like Elmo said, well, I know what it means. It just means being a person, being a neighbor, and doing what God tells you to. So according to Ferrari, who is this big, that's what it means. Being a person, being a neighbor, and doing what God tells you.